American Vice President Joe Biden has brought an end to his ambitions of becoming president and an almost 50-year political career. With US President Obama at his side, Mr. Biden announced he will not make a third run for the Democratic nomination in what would have been an uphill battle anyway against Hillary Clinton.
I believe we're out of time, the time necessary to mount a winning campaign for the nomination. But while I will not be a candidate, I will not be silent.
Joe Biden stood with President Obama and said the Democratic nominee should stand on their accomplishments.
Democrats should not only defend this record and protect this record, they should run on the record.
But mostly, Biden framed an agenda for a campaign that was not to be.
We cannot sustain the current levels of inequality that exist in this country. I believe the huge sums of unlimited and often secret money pouring into our politics is a fundamental threat to our democracy.
He also made a plea for bipartisanship and took a veiled swipe at Hillary Clinton after she half-jokingly called Republicans her enemies during this month's presidential debate.
I don't think we should look at Republicans as our enemies. They are our opposition. They're not our enemies. And for the sake of the country, we have to work together. 4 more years of this kind of pitched battle may be more than this country can take.
After losing his son Beau to brain cancer earlier this year, Biden's decision on whether to enter the race hinged largely on his family's emotional readiness for a campaign. Today he called for an ambitious assault on the disease that claimed his son.
If I could be anything, I would have wanted to be the president that ended cancer, because it's possible. It's personal. But I know we can do this.
Biden, ever cheerful and resilient, ended with a note of optimism that left many friends and supporters wondering what might have been.
It's about equality. It's about fairness. It's about respect. As my dad used to say, it's about affording every single person dignity. It's not complicated. We can do this. And when we do, America won't just win the future. We will own the finish line.
OK, well, as a result of that, you could say Hillary Clinton's grip on the White House could have tightened. Biden has, of course, been plagued by personal tragedy and is still recovering from the death earlier this year of his son. The Republicans are struggling to find an electorally viable candidate, so Hillary Clinton edges closer to becoming America's first female president. Earlier I spoke to Gorana Gergic from the US Studies Centre. Gorana Gergic, thank you so much for your time. Were you surprised ultimately that Joe Biden decided not to contest the presidency?
Well, I think everyone was a bit surprised today, given that this decision has been a long time in the making. But I think given all the factors that have been listed and that he listed, I think that it isn't so much of a surprising decision.
Ultimately, do you think it did turn on the death of his son and the impact that has had on his family and what a presidential campaign would have meant for those closest to him?
Certainly. I think that the personal considerations were definitely at the forefront of his decision. He has lost now the second child. We remember that in 1972 he lost his daughter and his wife in a tragic accident. So this is again another time in his life when tragedy has struck, and certainly it wouldn't be easy to heal the wounds and mourn the death of your child and continue with something as brutal as the presidential campaigning is in the United States. But also I think that the decision has been largely impacted by the fact that Joe Biden, if he was to run at this point, would be running against 2 candidates that had a lot of time to establish themselves on the field.
And time was going to be crucial here. Of course, he would have needed a big machine behind him. There is the question of fundraising and so on. But in your assessment, what impact could he have had?
Well, I think that his impact would have certainly be most felt by Hillary Clinton. He is somewhat of a moderate like she is, maybe a bit progressive on some stances, but certainly he would crowd out the field there where Hillary Clinton now stands. I think that ultimately, given all the polls that we've had so far, he wouldn't stand that much of a chance to actually win the nomination. But what he would have done is certainly boost up Bernie Sanders' profile in a way and enable him to have a lower threshold to win the primaries in some of these early states.
And of course it's all academic now, but could that have actually cost Hillary Clinton the nomination, do you think?
In hypotheticals, I think maybe, but I wouldn't go that far to speculate. It's just kind of a near miss. It hasn't happened, so I think it would be very hypothetical to make those calls.
Okay, well, what is not hypothetical is that Hillary is the front runner, and she was the front runner, of course, in 2008 as well, and ultimately did not win the nomination. Do you see this now as a lock for her, or is there still some questions to be answered?
Well, I think for Hillary Clinton, this is, in these early days, it's definitely going to be a boost. As I said, the field would be pretty crowded if Joe Biden decided to run. However, Hillary Clinton still has some issues that she needs to deal with. Primarily, that's the whole issue of emails that still aren't going away, even though Bernie Sanders said that he would even drop it. But she is facing a possibility of even an FBI indictment. So that's one thing. The other thing is that she still needs to find a way to speak to some of those northern progressives who Bernie Sanders has captured, and that's reflected in some of these early primaries. So definitely there are issues for Hillary Clinton still, and this is not a decided race yet by any means.
One of the questions that I see continually posed about Hillary Clinton is that many people, despite her many years of service and her high profile, still don't know fundamentally what she stands for. Now, there are things that she said and did in office and when she was Secretary of State as well that she has since pulled back from, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, one of them, the war in Syria, another. There is a feeling of that perhaps there's a lack of authenticity there. Do you see that?
Yeah, I think with Hillary Clinton, we have to realize that she's a very skilled politician, and the campaign she's running is running like a well-oiled machine that continually polls people, that bases the kind of policy statements based on those polls, based on public opinion. And certainly what we are seeing with this, we could say, flip-flopping on some of the issues, such as the Trans-Pacific Partnership that you just mentioned, is a reflection of being a very skilled politician. And certainly a lot of critics of Clinton's would point to not knowing who the real Hillary is, and constantly reinventing herself could pose a bit of a challenge in the long run, right? Because Bernie Sanders, if anything we can say about him is that he's authentic.
He is indeed, sometimes to his detriment, but we certainly know what he stands for. There is still also the question of Bill Clinton. They just celebrated another wedding anniversary, and she spoke very glowingly of their marriage and their political partnership. What role do you see him bringing ultimately to the campaign, and what impact will that have?
Look, I think Bill Clinton is very much a superstar in the United States. He is a president who got out of the office with higher approval ratings than he entered it, and I still think that he could be a great asset, someone who is well admired and someone who is revered, I think, on both sides of the politics. One has to just remember the fact that the Republicans sometimes evoke the Clinton years, even though they were very extremely actually dysfunctional in terms of partisanship, they still evoke those years as the years that the Republicans could work alongside the Democrats because of that policy of triangulation and Bill Clinton being perceived as somewhat of a moderate. So ultimately, I believe that having Bill Clinton on the side as an extremely popular former president could be only an asset for Hillary Clinton's campaign.
In the time we have left, let's look at the other side. Do you believe that the Trump factor will ultimately blow itself out, or can he continue to blaze a trail and potentially take this all the way to the nomination?
Look, it's anyone's guess, I think now. I think that there were a lot of predictions being made when the first momentum got going behind Donald Trump that that would peter out soon, and that he was basically a kind of a product of summer no news period or slow news period. We've definitely seen that Trump has lost some support after these two Republican debates that we've had in the past months. However, I think that now going forward, we have another two Republican debates coming up. It's going to be an open field. We've seen candidates falling and rising, so it's going to be very interesting. But for the time being, it seems that Trump is here to stay for a while.
And just finally, who amongst the range of candidates would be someone that could genuinely challenge Hillary Clinton for the presidency? I know that Jeb Bush is seen as a candidate. Marco Rubio is another. Beyond Trump, who do you believe would seriously mount a challenge?
Well, according to the polls at the moment, no one is still polling ahead of Hillary Clinton. Having said that, she is still under 50% of polling ahead of some of these candidates who would basically be more acceptable for the Republican Party establishment. I wouldn't want to make that sort of call, but certainly the two names that you've just mentioned could pose a formidable challenge. However, the polls indicate that still Hillary Clinton would prevail in those challenges.
Gorana Gergic, a pleasure to have you on the program. Look forward to chatting again. Thank you.
Thank you.
That is reporting live for tonight. Thanks for watching.